The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's town hall with AMHCA Board President Eric Beeson. Before we begin, I'd like to make sure everyone can hear me okay, so please just type the word yes into the question box if you can hear me. Great. Each attendee is in listen-only mode to avoid having background noises that may distract you from listening to the presentation. Throughout the presentation, a staff member will be managing the chat and question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. You may submit your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Without further ado, we'll turn it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you everybody for taking time out of your day. You might have had a long day at the office or you're in the middle of the day at the office, but either way, I really appreciate you all joining me for this town hall. And I've called this town hall Imagine a World. So imagine a world. You might be asking, what are we going to be imagining today? Well, first off, we're going to take a little bit of just quick updates on some things that have been going on at AMHCA National. Then I do want you to imagine a world with me. And then we'll close with some Q&A. So here are some quick updates. A couple things I've been really proud and excited about. First thing, committees have been active and engaged. And it's been really fun to see people leaning into their leadership styles and their leadership gifts and really pulling groups of people together to accomplish some really important tasks. So if you've ever thought about getting involved with a committee but never really thought where to go, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to connect you with one of the active committees that are up and running. I'm also happy to announce that our Code of Ethics has been revised and it's in its final editorial review, making it look all pretty for publication. And that is going to go into another publication called The Essentials of Clinical Mental Health Counseling, which I'll talk about in a moment. So you're going to see a new Code of Ethics as a standalone document. You'll also see it as a part of that larger document. You probably got an announcement that the new Clinical Mental Health Specialist and Diplomate program has launched with more levels of advanced practice credentialing coming. So you're going to see some new branding along some of those credentials, some new categories along some of those credentials, and some new ways that you might get involved in distinguishing yourself as an advanced practice specialist, as an advanced practice diplomate, or even as an advanced practice fellow, as we speak a little bit more towards the academics and the researchers in our membership. I'm excited to announce that conference is growing. We've got a nice base of attendees registered due to the hard work of getting everything finalized early on. So I hope you all will be joining us at the end of June in wonderful Las Vegas. I've promised that what happens in Vegas will not stay in Vegas, though, because we're going to do some great work and we're going to keep the work of conference going even after conference ends. Although there might be some other things that you might want to keep secret. I'm not going to ask you about those, but what I can say is what goes on at AMHCA 2020 is going to be phenomenal. So really excited for that conference. You've also probably seen some announcements about enhanced state level advocacy. We've been able to work with Dave Bergman, who's a longtime advocate in the mental health care field, a lot of experience in policy and regulation and legislation. And he had his first webinar for state chapter leaders recently. So we hope that you'll be seeing a lot more come from him and a lot more engagement at the national level to help you with some of your state level advocacy needs. And I might have jumped the gun a little bit. I thought the election ballot was already set. However, there's still some opportunities to throw your hat in the ring for some of our elected positions coming out. So you've hopefully seen some emails, and if you haven't, do a little search in the email to find out what positions are available. But as always, if you want to reach out, we can let you know what's there too. All right, so let's dream a little bit. I'd like for you all to imagine a world where, and I'm going to fill in what comes next in just a moment. But as we start to kind of open our minds up for a moment, I'd like you just kind of, sometimes I get so stuck in maybe wondering what's not going right or wondering what I wish would be differently that I forget to dream and I forget to think about the opportunities that are before us. So what I hope to do with this town hall today is really something I've been challenging our committees, I've been challenging our task forces, and I've been challenging our board to do, is imagine a world where. So let's take a couple things that I want to imagine. So imagine a world where clinical mental health counselors have a seat at the table. And this is not just one table, but this is all tables, all important tables. When we're talking about mental health, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about the profession. Imagine a world where clinical mental health counselors have parity in practice privileges, hiring practices, and reimbursement structures. We just saw Michigan have a big advocacy win to really establish their practice privileges. And we know that many states continue to battle the practice privilege legislation and regulation challenges. So imagine a world where those were firmly established. Imagine a world where there weren't as many barriers to getting hired in, say, an integrated care setting or the VA. And imagine a world where reimbursement went smoothly. Some of the administrative overhead was lessened, and also those rates came in at a place where you could pay your bills and have a living and keep the lights on to do the good services that you do. Imagine a world where all prospective and current clinical mental health counselors, as well as students, have a clear career trajectory with supports along the way. Imagine a world where AMHCA sets the standard for the clinical mental health counseling profession. And imagine a world where adequate mental health care is a right for all people. So imagine a world where these things are a reality. And as I reflect on the last 6 months of my presidency, and even going back before that to the previous presidents, and even before that when I was just a lowly member kind of trying to figure out what the heck AMHCA was and what they did, you know, I've really come to look over the horizon a little bit and really am starting to believe that world might be closer than we think. Why do I say that? Because literally we are sitting at these tables. I'm happy to announce that AMHCA has been asked to participate as a part of a multi-organizational working group focused on interprofessional collaboration across all mental health disciplines. So the picture on the left here that you see is before our interprofessional task force meeting that was held at the American Psychiatric Association's offices. The American Psychiatric Association is hosting, funding, supporting this initiative, but across the room, there's everybody from physician assistants to nurse practitioners to pharmacists to psychologists to social workers to NAMI to peer support specialists. And it was really just a wonderful time to see all the associations and all the professions represented around the same table, talking about what are the barriers that have gotten in the way to our interprofessional collaboration in the past. What are some shared principles that will guide our profession's interprofessional development and collaboration in the future? And then really, what are some joint projects that we're going to commit to do to really transform the mental health care delivery system in the way that associations and professions work together, communicate, collaborate, etc. So we've had our first in-person meeting. We'll continue to meet. We'll continue to hopefully do good work and start to bring about some products of change. So that's just one of those tables, but you also see that we've been really active in Washington over the past 6 months, meeting with stakeholders across the spectrum, from payer sources to professional associations to consumer organizations across the board. And one of the things that's really stood out to me in these meetings is that we're doing okay as a profession. I know sometimes I get a little bit critical about where we're at and wishing we were further along. But honestly, as I said around these tables and I listened to everybody talk, like, we've got something to bring to these tables. You know, sometimes we might buy into the narrative that we're a less than mental health professional. And I really want to advocate for us all to really lean into our strengths, lean into who we are, and lean into our training and our credentials to really believe that we belong at those tables and we have something to share. And that's been something that I think has been responded to very well as we've been working with these other associations to really look at the broader mental health care delivery system and the roles that each of our associations play within that system to shape policy, regulation, and to create innovative projects to enhance the well-being of those that we serve. We're also have a upcoming presentation to members of the insurance industry. The Association for Behavioral Health and Wellness is a association based in Washington whose membership includes people like Aetna Behavioral Health, Cigna, Kaiser Permanente, Beacon Health Options. So a number of payer sources make up this association, as well as a number of industry organizations as well. So we're going to be able to present to their membership. These are going to be CEOs, policymakers within these associations, just about ways that clinical mental health counselors can help meet their needs as payer sources, but also help meet the needs of those that they insure. So we expect this will be the first of many presentations that will come as we forge relationships with the insurance industry to really help to promote, again, the health and well-being of those we serve. This is one of my favorite pictures. Joel's probably on the line. He doesn't know that I'm going to share this picture of him, but I just think that this really captures the heart of a lot of what Joel does on a day-to-day basis, is grind it out in Washington, making progress for a number of legislations, but really kind of thinking about the two big ticket items right now: Medicare provider recognition and portability of our license. You know, if you haven't heard yet, there's this thing called an impeachment trial going on in the Senate, which has kind of taken up everybody's time. So it's really hard right now to think about pushing some large scale legislation through at this point. However, that doesn't mean we're stopping. We're continuing to have meetings, continuing to coordinate and look at alternative strategies to get provider recognition language into other bills that are moving forward, in addition to our bread and butter bill, as Joel likes to call it, that will establish clinical mental health counselors as Medicare providers. Portability, you all saw the announcement before my last town hall about NCLEP 2.0, and I'm happy to say that the task force, even though this was something that was a big accomplishment for us, we really are still looking at other options, right? There's other options that are popping up across the whole U.S., and we're tracking those options to really, again, just enhance and advocate for increased mobility of our licenses so that we can provide services where we need to. And I just heard recently that Florida is probably going to be one of the first states introducing some NCLEP-inspired legislation at the state level to, again, increase the provider base in the state of Florida. We are launching an essential publication, and I say this is an essential publication partially because it's called The Essentials of the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Profession. And this is a document that I really think is going to be seminal in our field and seminal for the association, because it's really going to be the first document that pulls together this broad range view of what it means to consider this profession, what it means to develop throughout this profession, what it means to have a thriving career to that point where one day you might retire. So the goal of this document is really to lay that out there for prospective mental health counselors, for students, for early professionals, and even seasoned counselors, to just really lay it out in a streamlined fashion so that it's really clear who clinical mental health counselors are, what our training is, what our credentials are, what our scope of practice is. So this becomes a document not only to sort of, I guess, be proud about internally, but this also becomes a document that we'll share with all these stakeholders, that we'll be able to disseminate to policymakers. So this will hopefully be the go-to resource for everyone to use whenever you're trying to explain, describe, advocate for who clinical mental health counselors are, who the American Mental Health Counselors Association is. So if you're a Simpsons fan, you might know what this picture references. And if not, it's just really that kind of angst that sometimes you get on in a trip. And you might have the face of some of the Simpsons characters, and you might be asking yourself, dang it, we've been working on these things for so long. Why aren't we there yet? So whenever I get into that space, I have to reframe a bit. And I have to kind of think of, one, all the accomplishments that have already happened. Then I also have to accept some realities of the current space that we're in. And then I have to ask myself, what else is it going to take for us to get there? What's it going to take for us to achieve that reality? What's it going to take for us to not only imagine a world the way we want it to be, but live and exist in a world the way we want it to be? So what will it take to get there? I have to start this by giving some applaud and some recognition. So this is a virtual round of applause. This is a virtual high five. And I really want to call attention to the three main staff people at the operational level that really focus on various levels of the association. And you'll see Melissa McShepard, Rebecca Gibson, and Whitney Meyerhofer. And I really want to elevate those names to you just because I don't know that I thank them enough, and I want to thank them in a public forum. And I hope that you too will also thank and appreciate the work that they do. But I really want to call our attention to these areas that they are involved in. And you'll see those are multiple areas, right? You'll see there are multiple areas that they're responsible for. And really, those are multiple jobs that they have to do. But we have all of these functions dedicated and achieved by these three people. So I want to acknowledge that first. I also want to acknowledge their leader, our CEO, our executive director, our de facto quote unquote lobbyist, Joel Miller, who also wears a lot of hats, who also does a lot of jobs, who tirelessly works for the association. So 4 people at the national level. We also have a volunteer staff person, Gray Otis, who volunteers his time to fill in some of the gaps, to help out. We also have Dave Bergman now, who's also being very generous in his relationship with us as we try to work at ways to sustain relationships moving forward. So what does this, why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because the system is maxed out. People are functioning optimally and really functioning at a level that I don't even know how they do it. You know, and so that's part of that reality that I think I have to accept as a leader, as a president. And I think also that I want us all to reflect upon, you know, not only where do we want to be, but our current reality, and that our system is maxed out. So I want you to imagine some more worlds with me. Imagine a world where AMHCA national staff were focusing on only one job, and we had other people to focus on those other elements of their job duty. Where AMHCA national provided higher touch points. You know, the more ability they have to focus and spread out to live into their strengths and their passion areas, that allows us to have more touch points with membership, with state chapters, with legislators, with policymakers, etc. Imagine a world where all states had a chapter and all clinical mental health counselors in your state was a member of that chapter. Imagine a world where a member at one level of AMHCA is also a member of all the levels of AMHCA. What do I mean by that? A member at the national level was also a member at the state level. And in states that have local chapters, we're also a member of that local chapter. I want to give a shout out to Florida, who does a great job with their 3-in-1 campaign, where a person can join at the local, state, and national level. There's been a lot of talk about unified dues over the course of my existence of knowing about AMHCA, with some pros and cons. And I'm happy to say that we're reimagining that a little bit and thinking about what does it really mean to be one AMHCA? What does it really mean to be one AMHCA with multiple levels, a national level, a state level, a local level, and an individual member level? So imagine a world where all clinical mental health counselors in the U.S. are linked to AMHCA at all levels. Imagine a world where revenue and costs are shared among all AMHCA levels. So we lighten the burdens and enhance the strengths at each level. And imagine a world where AMHCA National focuses on helping you help your members' needs while setting a national and international agenda and being the voice in Washington. So imagine this world with me again, as we transition from some dreaming to current realities to some more dreaming, and what will it take us to get there? So think about this a minute. What will it take us to get there? First off, I've been giving a lot of thanks today, and I want to give some more thanks out to everybody on this call, to everyone that's currently a member of AMHCA, to everybody that's been a member of AMHCA at some time in their past. And when I say AMHCA, I'm talking about all levels, national, state, local. And I want to say thank you to all clinical mental health counselors, regardless of if you've ever been a member at any level at AMHCA, because you do a lot of great work. You contribute in a lot of different ways. And the reality is, I don't want to ask more of you to make these dreams come true, to make these things that we're imagining a reality. Because the reality is we're all maxed out, right? We all work hard. We all serve our clients, our communities, our family members. And we all struggle with some of the barriers within the healthcare system and some of the struggles that come along with that. So I don't want to ask more of you all, because we are all maxed out. We all do the best we can given the resources that we have. And I really believe that of clients, of people that I run into, of myself. I really believe that we all do the best that I can. So I know that's not the barrier. So who should we ask then? Who should we ask? I want to pose this idea to you. 2017, the most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics said there's approximately 139,820 mental health counselors across the country. Now think about that. Almost 140,000 people, almost 140,000 people. So when I think about who am I going to ask, potentially there's a larger pool of people that we can continue to connect with, to expand, and really build what I would like to call a constituency of consequence, so that whenever a bill is brought up, there's a consequence to that bill not being passed or not being pushed forward, because our numbers are that big. So who are we going to ask? More people will help us get to that place that we're imagining. More people will help us get to that place that we're imagining. And what is that place that we're imagining? Now, I've been talking in kind of generalities, aspirations up until this point. And the next slide I'm going to show you has a really big number on it. And I want to provide some context for that really big number. One thing that the AMHCA National Board, and specifically one of our task forces, the One AMHCA Task Force, as well as the Finance Committee, has started to look at budgeting beyond the current year, beyond the future year, and really looking at a strategic budgeting process to think about what's it really going to take to make that world that we are so passionate about making. So this number is our first effort at trying to capture what it would require for the association to function at that level, to bring about that world that we want to see. And again, this isn't about keeping the lights on. This isn't about, this isn't about making sure that we pay the bills. This is about looking forward and saying, what can we do with? What can we do this with these resources? So what's that number? Approximately $2.5 million. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? That's a lot of money. So let's look at this in context again. $2.5 million divided by 139,820 mental health counselors across the U.S. That's $17.88 a year. That's $1.49 per month per person. When I talk about how can we share the expenses, how can we share the revenue, how can we pull this together so that we're functioning in a unified manner, this is one strategy that I think we're going to be able to bring to a reality. Now, you might be wondering, Eric, I'm going to have to do a mental status exam. You might be experiencing some delusions of grandeur, and I'm okay with that. I'm often criticized for being a little bit of unicorns and rainbows, and I'm okay with that. What I want to challenge us all to think about is, what is that world we want to see, and what are we going to do to help us get there? And again, I believe we're already doing the best we can. So the answer then has to be is, how do we extend the influence? How do we share the responsibilities? How do we cast a vision through which all 139,000 mental health counselors want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, the health and well-being of those we serve, while furthering to advance the clinical mental health profession? So can we get there? That's really the question, right? I can dream, I can cast vision, the boards can do all the work, but the reality is, can we actually get there? So I want to talk about some next steps that we're taking as the national level of AMHCA. You know, I already said we're maxing out the system. We're also expanding the system as we can. You're seeing people volunteer to be staff. You're seeing people donate their time. You're even seeing people make donations to the overall budget to extend services, expand the infrastructure, to upgrade things, to help us get to that place where we want to be. We're going to keep elevating the work of the One AMHCA Task Force. This was a task force that was born out of leadership at last conference to really focus on the operational structure of AMHCA, to look at what it would really mean if we were one association with multiple levels, and what it would mean if we really could share the costs, but also share the strengths, the profits, the revenue, the passion that we all have, and tap into that network of people that we have doing the best they can throughout the country. I mentioned strategic budgeting. We're really looking at this very intently now as a finance committee, and really thinking about, how do we get to that number, to bring that reality into fruition, to bring that world to where we want it to be, so that we can share the costs, but also share in the gains. And this is something I'm pushing the finance committee and the board to consider. I'm challenging us to think about, what does it look like for us at a national level to give back, to support in new ways, to promote the organization, to promote the oneness of the full entirety of the association in a way that we might not have ever done before. And we're going to start to see some kind of massive recruitment efforts. If we're going to hit that number, if we're going to look at those 140,000 people, that's going to require some recruitment efforts. And my intention, and again, this is only one person's intention, is that we are really able to increase shared benefits through all levels of the association. So even though we're going to be leading these recruitment efforts, we hope that those efforts will have benefits at all levels of AMHCA. I don't have solid details, because the One AMHCA Task Force is still ironing some of our recommendations up that will then go to the National Board of Directors, who will then vote on some of those initiatives. But I want to give you all kind of a teaser, so that if you see these recruitment efforts, you know where it's coming from. Part of that recruitment effort might be introductory rates for new members, people that haven't been members in the past. And I want you all to know that those introductory rates are in hopes of building that membership base, so that all dues can start to come at a level that can alleviate some of the burdens that we might feel. Part of the goal of a professional association, from my opinion, is helping you do your job better, helping you to eliminate some of the burdens along the way, while providing you resources and supports along the way to help you thrive in your profession. So I really hope that as we open up the fold a little bit more, as we strive towards that world that we want to exist in, that those benefits will be experienced at every level of the association and every level of the profession. And collectively, what are our next steps? You know, I said I don't want to ask anything more of you. We are all maxed out. We are all doing the best we can. What I do want to think about is, how am I going to challenge myself? And I hope that you will join me in this challenge. So I want to encourage you to imagine a world with me. My world has been one way. I've shared some of those ideas with you. The board has shared some of those ideas. And I hope that you also share those ideas too. What is that world that you want to imagine? I also want to encourage us to trust the climb. This was a phrase started by the head coach of my alma mater, West Virginia University. He came in, a new coach, a rebuilding year, and he said, trust the climb, we're going to get there. And I hope that we all can remind ourselves of that along the way. I've been super impressed at the work of the board, the work of committees to really cast a strategic plan, a strategic vision, to the point where I'm comfortable saying that I kind of know where this is going. I can kind of see the end of the story. I can see the world coming to reality. And I need to trust the processes to work themselves out. I need to trust that we have the people in place to make that happen while also respecting the reality that they're working really hard and trying to provide more support and upgrades to help that climb continue. I also want to challenge us to buy into something bigger than ourselves. This isn't about AMHCA being the best professional association, in my opinion. This is about people's mental health care needs being served in the best way possible. This is about creating a mission, a vision, a world where mental health care is a right of all people and that there are adequate providers to meet those needs. You see this in our new vision statement, to equip clinical mental health counselors to meet the healthcare needs of those we serve. That's at our heart now. And we want to keep remembering that, buying into something bigger than ourselves, helping everyone to meet the healthcare needs of those we serve while also advancing the profession. I'm going to encourage us to continue to contribute what we can, to evaluate our own energy level, our own limitations, and ask, what can I do? What is this profession? What is this association worth to me? And how can I live into that world that I want to see happen? And finally, encourage the passion of others. Think about those you work with. Think about those that you break bread with. Think about those people in your community that are involved in the healthcare delivery system, and really just to encourage that passion in others. And if they are clinical mental health counselors, hopefully to encourage them to buy into a world that they hope to see one day. And if the plan, the vision, the mission of AMHCA is a place where they want to contribute, then awesome, and invite them along to the climb with you. I'm reflecting on the way I'm talking now, and this sounds like a membership commercial, and that's not my intention. So I apologize for that. But what I do want to see happen is that everybody knows they have a home, everybody knows they have a profession, and everybody can be secure in that profession, not only where it is now, but where it's going. Because they can be anxious at times, right? Especially when we have a lot of administrative overhead, when reimbursement rates are falling, and all of those things that we know we live every day. I just want to hope and encourage us all to, again, think about how we can celebrate our achievements, accept some realities, and then work towards bringing that world into reality. So I'll just close today with the question of, will you create this world with me? So I want to thank you all for, I felt like I might got a little preachy there at the end. Hopefully that was okay. And hopefully there are some positive benefits to our dialogue today. And if you're watching this on recording, then hopefully something that, let me rewind that for a minute. As my yoga teacher once says, take what you want, leave what you don't. So what I meant to say was, as you're watching this recording, as you're listening, I hope there's something you can take away. And for everything that's not, you can leave it there. So thank you all for your time. And Rebecca, if there's any questions, I'm happy to jump in.
We don't have any questions right now, but if we want to wait just a minute and see if any come through. If you do have any questions, please make sure to enter them on the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel.
I wish I could ask Joel a question of how he liked his picture, but we'll save that one for another day. y'all are an easy crowd. But again, I appreciate your time. If you're typing some questions, keep typing. But as always, reach out. Reach out. Let me know how things are going. Whether you have any questions, comments, any gripes, any complaints, or hey, even an affirmation or two, all are welcome. So feel free to reach out and let us know how we can build this world together. I'm excited for the journey. I'm excited for the climb.
We do have one question that's come through. They said,
Yeah.
you mentioned that Florida would be the first to help make licensing more portable. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so last year, Florida had introduced some legislation that focused on the NCLEP plan. And if you're wondering the specifics of the NCLEP plan, you can find that on AMHCA's website. But essentially, NCLEP was a creation of a national portability task force, multiple associations, multiple stakeholders, state counseling licensure boards got together to create kind of a set of standards that everybody could at least agree in part with. So we created that process so that we could give it to state counseling boards, state associations to try and introduce legislation that might increase the portability of licenses. So, Florida introduced that last year. It didn't make it through. Really no fault of the plan, just some other things that were going on. And Florida's president, Aaron Morton, also the Southern Regional Director for AMHCA National, told us at a recent board meeting that they are feeling very confident that legislation will get passed through this legislative cycle. So as far as we know, that will be the first NCLEP-inspired legislation to pass. So what that will do is not just... I can't say that it'll lessen the standards because it won't lessen the standards, but what it will do is that it will open up the ability for people coming into Florida to have a clear and easy pathway to endorsement of their license that they bring into their state. So the goal of NCLEP is to increase endorsement practices so that when you do move into a state, there's some clear guidelines to increase accessibility while still maintaining rigor and protection of the public. So Florida will be the first state to introduce, as far as we know, some of the NCLEP-inspired legislation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eric. We don't have any other questions that have come through. So I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today's town hall. If you have any other questions, you can certainly contact AMHCA at education@amhca.org. Once you leave today's town hall, you'll receive a survey for this presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. Don't forget to look for your follow-up email within the next few days with the recording of today's event. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.